Welcome back. Welcome back to Unfiltered, Unspoken podcast. We're told you we're going to continue to share life experiences. Today, we are in Central Europe virtually with the Doctor of Self-Worth, Endre Hoffmann. And if I said it wrong, please correct me. We want to thank you for being a guest on Unfiltered, Unspoken podcast. And we cannot wait to hear your testimony. We asked if you could come up a few minutes to introduce yourself, and then City Sid is going to kick off that first question.
Absolutely, I'm excited to be here. And Miss Confidence, tell me, where should we start?
Well, wherever you want to start, whatever you want to tell us about yourself, and then we're going to kick it off. Wherever you want to start, you can just give us a little snippet, and then Sid's going to vibe right off of you and kick that first question off.
Yeah, absolutely. So the story of the Doctor of Self-Worth is going back 34 years, back to my childhood. I somehow became disconnected from my father, and I tried for about 10, 15 years to win his love. And no matter what I did, it didn't work. And eventually, probably in my 20s or 30s, I worked out I hated my dad by the time that probably he doesn't know what love is. He doesn't know how to love himself or anyone else. And unfortunately, I was working out from that baggage for the next 3 decades. I was fighting for external approval. I was trying to win his love, to impress others, comparing myself to everyone anyway. And I had all of these inner insecurities running, lack of self-confidence, lack of self-worth, and the feeling of I'm not at the right place. I don't know what I'm doing. Why am I here? And that ended me traveling and changing what I was doing every 5 years of my life, because like these old communist countries, they had 5-year terms. This was called the national plan. And the first 5 years I worked in banking. The next 5 years I moved to New Zealand first, the far point that you can find on the planet from my dad, because by that time, as I said, I just wanted to be as far as possible. And then I was back in entrepreneurship and in the personal development space, hoping that I will find the cure. And I spent there for another 10 or 15 years, spending over $100,000 on things that did not work. And I thought I'm a hopeless case. I didn't believe in myself. And I lost a lot of money through my business ventures. And eventually in Australia, 6 years ago, my life was about to collapse. Massive collapse. We're talking about health collapse. My shoulders were gone. I was driving trucks around 60 hours a week. And one morning, my wife said, "Is it time for us to divorce?" And that was the light bulb moment, that something fundamentally must change, because I will lose my 2 children and my beautiful wife, and I was working for nothing. Prompt me with some questions.
Okay, I guess that is enough for Sid to kick it off, and we're going to get a little deeper.
All right. And as we do with everyone, we do like to start, at the beginning of your story. When you did mention, you spent a good portion of your life, trying to win over your father's love, attention. Give us a little bit of detail about, what was life like as an adolescent? What was your home structure like? And what was the kind of situation surrounding, the hardness of your father?
Well, he was struggling with his own anxiety. He was quite angry and flaring up at times, aggressive, could say. And he brought it home. He was trying to run a business. So this was why I have not chosen the entrepreneurship or like the self-employed path for another 20 years, because I said, if that's what my father's doing, obviously I need to do something else, because he was the worst example. He came home, we were walking on eggshells so we won't get into trouble, but he called me out for things I should have known to do, taking out the rubbish. And probably every month or two, he had to sort of release his own struggle with some drinking, and then yeah, it turned out ugly. He's been, drinking with my uncles, and then they became aggressive. He was not an easy drunk, let's say, and things didn't help either when it came to for me to step in front of others, to be able to speak. Like, my face went red most of the time if I had to speak more than two people at a time. I was able to coast school and basically skip the days when I had to stay or stand in front of an audience and share anything. And up to my university degree, I was able to sort of uh, avoid it. Avoidance was a big one for me. And then I had been humiliated in front of a bigger audience. But luckily, I got my diploma, and I had no idea who I was. I was so disconnected from my feelings because of this losing battle. Like, I thought I'm not the right son. There's something wrong with me, and I was asking for and searching for the answers that where have I gone wrong, or why am I the wrong fit with my dad? Because obviously my dad is perfect, so there must be something that's I'm out of place. I'm coming from another planet. I had all these never-ending circles in my head.
Okay. Whew. I'm
Oh,
ready because I know this is going to be a lot. And, thank you for sharing your testimony with us. I wanted to jump back because you said your dad was not an easy drunk. And there probably are a lot of people that are going through the same situation that you have been through in their childhood years. Can you elaborate a little bit about not being a easy drunk?
yeah, he was angry, usually arrogant, loud, and he was sort of picking fights with anyone around. And I remember the mind. Human beings are amazing. So my mind must have chosen the path of, all right, I need to get out of the house or get away from the house as much as I can. So I started playing basketball, and I was going quite intense. I became a national championship with the team at age 14, and I thought, well, this will work. I mean, he will probably see the results, and I will get congratulated or appreciated or maybe loved. It didn't work. Then I went running marathons, also again time away, and ice climbing, really crazy stuff to prove myself that I'm worthy, I'm good enough. But my dad was outside. His conscience was his business, and he was not a master of, let's say, personal relationships. He did not trust pretty much anyone in our family or outside of our family. I remember his business, he had these massive red signs about what not to do. And he was coming home, he was blaming all the employees that how stupid they are and what they had done. And basically his, if you could call it, his success was starting that business with 16 partners, and eventually within 10 or 12 years he was the only one left. So slowly and regularly he's been able to kick one out or dig them out of the business. So he was the only owner in about 10-15 years, and he was working 6-7 days a week. But probably it was an escape mechanism as well, where he didn't know how to relate or how to love or how to connect with his children or with my mom. And mom was always trying to keep peace. There was a few physical, let's say, conflicts, and luckily knife was not around thanks to my mom. The kitchen was the place for these atrocities, and luckily it was more of a bit of a wrestle, because he was controlling money, and as such he was controlling the whole family. We knew he had money, and my mom had to start her own business to, let's say, create enough for us to live sustainably. And we lived in a housing estate on the second floor of a 10-story building. Well, that was those days quite challenging for us.
And you mentioned previously, where you grew up was considered a communist country. How did that, well, did any, bit of that play a part, into kind of the culture of your household, um, and, kind of being at that point, probably, like global criminals from what it looks like to other countries. Does that play a part into how, your household was ran, how hardened, parents and things may be? Tell us a little bit about that, as far as the status of that type of government, within the rest of the world.
Well, I love that question, Sid, because like I realized about probably 10 years ago that I was born and I was brought up in domestic violence. And it wasn't even a term when I was young. And I realized that most of the other kids boys had very similar cases in the family and outside of my family. So probably the system was pretty Hungary we are talking about. The system was fairly repressive, and it wasn't different in school. Like the idea was, hey, now you are in school, now you're going to study for 12 years, you like it or not, you need to get good grades because then there is a chance for you to get a good job, and shut up and do it. um, that was the norm. This is the Prussian type of education. And obviously when generations have been brought up in this environment, you may feel small, silly, or uneducated, and they're always looking for faults in school and outside of school. And my father has been certainly a prime example of fault finding. Anytime, anywhere, he was able to tell me what's wrong with me or how I'm going to fail. And he literally has become a master at destroying self-worth and self-confidence. So he was sort of picking out what could be a mistake in his, let's say, little word, and then he was pointing out, pretty much looking for evidence how you stuffed up here and there, and eventually there came punishment. So I'm doing exactly the opposite. I'm empowering people because I don't think I would have been better, I believe, with physical abuse. But when one is taking away your self-worth, your self-confidence, you are becoming a victim. And I think it's a very hard baggage to start your life with. Took me 34 years.
Um, I love to hear Mel's perspective, because a lot of times males are silenced. We do have a lot of males that talk. We wish more would speak out. So thank you for your transparency. I wanted to jump back because you said you were disconnected from your father. Do you think that your father went through some childhood traumas of his own, and those childhood traumas impacted, he took that out on his family as well, because he didn't know how to parent or cope, and he was built with just full of anger, not getting professional help. And I can only imagine back then seeking professional help.
Certainly, he was completely unconscious all along, and I went back to research what's been going on in his life. So my grandfather has been no different, or even worse. He's been, these two, my father and my grandfather, they didn't come along that well either, to the point of, I think when my dad was 21 or 22, he was disowned. So he was kicked out of the family for, I think, 5 or 6 years. And my grandpa was, he had no words like congratulations or well done in his vocabulary either. He lived a very rule based life, and he had lots of trauma as well. Like he was he lived through two world wars. I mean, you can imagine in Europe how things went. There's not enough of anything, there's no resources, there's nothing to eat. And then he ended up working in Russian labor camps even after the war for 3 or 5 years. And this certainly has not helped. So his coping mechanism to survive was a very rule-based life. I remember when I was going to see him, like we were not allowed to drink before we finished eating the plate. So he was and what I realized at the age of sort of 15 or 20, he was very angry as well, and he was able to express it at least. Was always venting it off, and for some reason, I think this is a big one. He's been watching television, thinking what's going on TV is the truth, or that's the reality of the world. And obviously, it's a very distorted view, and I think television, as it is a commercial organization. It's selling ads, and I believe they want to get people into, let's say, fear and anxiety, to then buy whatever the suggestion is. Obviously, booze or medication or Coca-Cola, whatever it is, but sell them when they fall into trance. And that's why we see the news, 80-90% negative, because that's the psychology that we need in these people, so they can be manipulated and controlled. And he was never aware of that, but that has set up his emotional dwelling place. It was, I hate the word, there are these rogues about messing the politicians, that they are thieves, and he would never stop. He just kept reciting the news. Imagine that level of consciousness, whereas he could have chosen his own terms to live and maybe switch off television. So that was a lot as well. And I look back one more generation. So my grandfather, now he was an alcoholist. So the rule-based life was just perfect from my grandpa, because unfortunately he was an aggressive. My grandfather, he was an aggressive drunk, and it was not ideal to be around him. So my grandfather's rules was, for example, one tiny bit of spirit at Easter and at Christmas, and never drink any more alcohol because he could get into trouble. And so he had his coping mechanisms, rules to contain himself and manage his life. And obviously, the Russian experience after the war has not helped and just added more intensity to have those rules that constricted him, and obviously take away his freedom that he was never aware of, I believe.
Now, did you grow up with siblings? And did they, did you all, if so, did you all receive the same version of your father? Or, well, yeah, we'll start with that. If you did grow up with siblings, do you all, have shared experiences, or, feel like everything was just kind of standard with how you acted all the time?
I did have a sister. Well, I think this is an important teaching lesson here. It's about, probably she was not that affected, we could say, if I look back. But I really want you to get this. I would say she has survived this whole scenario. She didn't take my dad that seriously, but I just had a Christmas celebration again with my sister, coming back to Europe after living in Australia for 12 years, the last 5 years. And what I realized that my sister has exactly married to a man who had this exact match to my dad's. Very controlling person, knows it all, can't argue with him. Obviously, this is affecting now 3 children and my sister, but he is running business as well, at least. So he's a slightly better version than my dad. So we survived this whole pressure scenario in different ways. And a story comes to mind from Italy. You might have heard this, and I think it tells a lot about the human mind, how trauma or how an experience can be translated into 2 different versions. I mean, you might have heard that story of 2 brothers brought up in the Italian mafia, and 30 years after, one turns out to be a very respected policeman, doing its best to save the world from crime, and the brother ends up in and out of prison. And they had this wonderful series of interviews with them, and they had the exact same answer. They asked, how did you turn out to be a policeman and all these respect in the community and how much you have done? He said, what else could I have been? Now, the brother interviewed in prison had exactly the similar and the same answer. He said, well, look at what happened. That was the only way to be. And this is where the human mind, and coping mechanisms are certainly a thing to look at, and how trauma is perceived.
I want to ask before we jump off, because you mentioned that your sister's husband is similar to your dad. Do you and your sister have a good relationship? And how does it affect you as a brother watching your sister go through what you watch as a child?
Well, I think it's a better version, the husband that my sister is with now. Yet because I'm working with mindset, I'm empowering children from the age of sort of 14 to 22. I always have clients, and also have in the higher range to 60, 70, and even 80-year-olds come to work with me. Let's say I choose not to tolerate this environment that they have created. So yes, the children are labeled, you're stupid, what are you doing? You don't know what you're doing. So there is this disdainful, patronizing type of scenario. And obviously, when one is exposed to this, let's say my sister, well, her coping mechanism, again, in a similar environment, is to be like him. If he wants to avoid conflict, then see, the best way to fit in is to take on similar or the same patterns. I can even see that, like, my dad died probably 8 or 10 years ago. Can you believe my mother, who is free to do however she wants to live, she still has some traumatic experiences, behaviors, and attitudes that she is still carrying from that relationship after 30 years. So it's amazing how people are able to cope and unfortunately pick up certain attitudes, values, even emotions, and then not even questioning to carry it on for the rest of their lives.
And once you were able to, get out of that environment, or, at least put some distance between you and that, what was the next step for you? What did that lead you into? What did that kind of make your dreams and aspirations, like, are what we go through usually kind of carve out that lane for us. So what was next for you after, you know, putting some distance between you and such a harsh upbringing?
Well, I kept suffering the same patterns. Like I got rejected when I moved to New Zealand. My girlfriend at the time, she just left me, just like that. Not good enough pattern. There, bang, the mirror effect has been running my life for another 15 or 20 years. So it was not an easy way out for me, because I didn't know where the problem is. I was looking for answers on the outside. So I said, well, I need to find answers that I couldn't find in my family. I traveled in over 70 countries on 5 continents, and I was looking for spiritual gurus to tell me what's wrong with me. I went to events with Anthony Robbins, firewalking, books, seminars, hypnotherapy, past life regression. Like I spent over $100,000 to figure this out. And unfortunately, what I found out most of the time, what was not working. Like there was no one to tell me early on that, hey, you know, your beliefs and your identity is creating the results that you're getting. So I was wasting money on investments that, you know, the quick rich schemes I've been in. I had jobs that I was really unsatisfied with, and I was chasing false goals. I was trying to get enough money. I had these massive goals of, you know, houses and all of that, but it was all false identity. It was all false to pursue. And as I said, it never ended. And at one point, like I had these 2 boys, my children and my wife, and they stopped believing in me. Now that was really painful, but I realized, like, I don't believe in myself. Now, remember the mirror effect? My family started to question whether I have a chance to, because I was egoistic, you know, I wanted to win the arguments. Like I was not much different from my dad. I was not beating them up. So I was probably a bit better version, but I think my coping mechanism, that was the only thing I was driving me, not to become like my dad, not to become like my grandfather. Now what happened? I was right on the other side of the scale, and I ended up repressing myself to not be like them, but I was still not my true and authentic self, emotionally free. That is another way to, because I met a lot of people who are, you know, they telling themselves, oh, I'm done with my traumatic experiences from earlier times, yet all they had, they just internalizing the struggle. They're beating themselves like myself, and like it doesn't help. And at one point, if they're not ready to look at it, those emotions will start to eat them from inside, and they probably get very, very sick, because I see chronic diseases coming out of unresolved trauma. And again, my dad was the perfect example. I hate to say this, but I was sending him letters from New Zealand explaining to him, when I was, you know, I was doing all these studies about religions and soul and why we are here and how we could evolve and all of those things. And I was telling him that, you know, you think you're the boss, you're trying to control everything, and life will teach you how you have control nothing. And eventually, in a few years' time, when I left, he ended up, number 1, I think it was non-Hodgkin lymphoma. That was his first one, cancer. And then 2 more, the muscular shrinking disorder, something like that, autoimmune disease. It was literally, his body was killing him. The 3rd one was the stroke. And I think 15 years after, he was just gone. That was a routine examination. That was a little bit of a blip, a little bit of a glitch with the doctor, and somehow he fell into coma. 2 days gone. So he died 10 years ago, early on. And he never connected the dots. He never realized that he needed psychological help. He had so much unawareness about his own limitations that he basically wasted most of his life. And he was a repressive person all along. So I have this strange theory, and luckily there is no filters here, so I can say whatever I want. I see on Earth now an acceleration happening. So if one is here in Earth School and they are not evolving, not growing, they are here for nothing, I think they're called back. They had to go. And especially if it's a suppressive person, suppressing family, suppressing employees, suppressing their environment, I think things will happen and they will check out of life. Maybe they'll get another chance somewhere in the future, but I think there is no opportunities forever, because at one point they realized that there's just no point from above, or the big plan, they didn't fit in, or they were not open to learn.
Interesting perspective. I want to jump back really quick because I know there's a missing piece that we haven't talked about much, and that's your mom. Where was your mother through all of this, and did she step in to try to help with you? Like, what was that? Did you have a connection with your mom?
Like, mom was, I call her the peacemaker, you know. She was the vigilant one to try and keep the peace. And what a good question. I really love your questions, because it's again asking for how mom is a part of this. And I love your questions, because I didn't want to talk about this. I normally never talk about this, but what happened, my dad cheated on my mom sort of when I was about 12, 13 years old. And these two had been yelling at each other for about 6 to 8 weeks. That was every day of the week, to figure out whether they're going to divorce, which would have been perfect, I believe, or they stayed together. And eventually, just for the sake of the children, they decided to stay together for us. I mean, that was probably the worst decision that they could come up with, because this marriage was dysfunctional. And my mom has probably did not believe in herself that she could sustain 2 children on her own. And I believe she chose some kind of financial safety rather than, because that would have been an inspiration to me to say, this is not working, I can't tolerate you anymore. Like, that would have been an inspiration to me to teach me at the age of 12, well, you don't need to put up with all the shit that is thrown at you. But this was their solution. And these two have never come out well. That was a lot of comments and bickering and arguing in front of us. So I've seen what a relationship is like that's not working, where 2 people are just triggering the hell out of each other most of the time. So my mom, this is very interesting. So my mom, to be tolerated in this relationship, she had to give herself up and swallow it. Now what happened? Because I have looked at her as well. She had a lot of repressed anger that she could not express, of course, because that would have set off another argument. And of course, my dad was physically abused sometimes. So again, she is now free to run her life as she wants to. But I think she could have made a very different decision, and that would have served every one of us, her and the 2 kids.
Now, going through what you went through growing up, how you grew up, were there any, let me rephrase this, we tend to, be comfortable or feel like what we're used to is normally the standard because we're living in it, right? So were there any, families or kind of TV, movies, anything that you kind of like romanticized or, thought that would be the ideal type of family structure or the ideal type of life for you? Was there anything that you romanticized or, dreamed about, once getting outside of those issues?
I had no example. I had no. Remember, we're talking about a communist country. Like to the age of 1990, we were locked up behind the Iron Curtain. So there was not much information coming from, let's say, the Western or more free countries. What we had is, let's say, the usual Russian series were running, and I don't remember any of that. I was so preoccupied with what's going on and how to stand out or somehow impress my dad and be the good boy that it was completely outside of my consciousness to look for other role models, and it would have been available. The only role model I have seen is a slightly better version, and who was my mother's brother, who was a successful businessman. But other than that, he was fairly abused. He was violent, arrogant, but at least he was not controlling money. And for me, that was a big one, because I wanted to help my mother as soon as possible with the finances. Yet, I was a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old, and I didn't have, let's say, the capacity, because I was just going to school every day. But my best way to sort of challenge the status quo was these physical scenarios where we started to fight with my dad, where the topic was, why don't you give mom money to buy what we need? So it was certainly not an easy time for me. I didn't watch a lot of movies because television was not allowed for me to watch.
I want to ask one last question on a mom situation, and I'll finish. Have you and your mother ever talked about how your dad affected you? And if so, did she ever apologize or explain to you why she didn't step in?
I did not challenge her. She has been aware. Like, she had seen this very, very shy, reserved boy. Whereas I was an athlete, I was, winning championships and medals. Yet I don't think she realized ever the magnitude of the psychological pressure that I was exposed to. Because remember, she was exposed to the same thing. Like, we had this one repressive person in the family that has been the king of the neighborhood, and we had to fit in. And I think through, it's very interesting. My mom is following some of my content, and about 10-15% of my content is in her language. So she has been able to piece together, because she's my follower, and she has been able to piece together my old self and what struggles I've been through when I was young. And I don't think she realized what was going on for me because of the achievements that I had done. So from her point of view, it looked like, oh, this boy is just amazing. He's just starting to do things, and he's onto it. But I believe most of the achievements I had was out of, I need to prove myself to my dad, so hopefully he's going to love me. That was the internal motivation.
And what did you say that, I guess, where did that bring you? Where did the train stop and let off? What type of career did it throw you into? What, kind of heart did it give you? Where do you just feel like that you ended up as a person, based on what you went through, and what does it motivate you to do, in your life as an adult?
Well, it has put me into these pretty much very impossible scenarios where I was chasing, as I said before, false targets. I thought money is, because money was controlled. And I thought, if I have enough money, I can travel around, I can have some fun, and I'll be rich. And what I found out in those last years before my breakout, the psychological breakout, is that, visiting country number 76 and 68 was not giving me that much. Obviously, I invented self-reflective traveling. This idea was for me to get triggered by the environment, to find myself in very challenging situations. So obviously, if it works for everyone, then there is something in me. I realized that there is something in me that keeps me in the loop. And I think I was very dissatisfied. I was asking myself, why am I doing this? What am I doing on this planet anyway? And this self-beat up, it was constantly annoying. Why am I here? Why I have to work this hard? Why am I a father? Why I can't go back traveling with a backpack and do what I love? Yet I was longing for a relationship. And the answer to your question is, now I would love to guess. Like, I would like to ask you, what would you guess how my wife turned out to be? Now, she has turned out to be a mirror. You could have guessed. She had low self-confidence, no sense of direction. She was uncertain, and not very successful. So obviously, I got myself into a loop of a relationship which almost crashed. And when I had help and I was able to, let's say, step into my best version and to create results through becoming a mentor, and the Doctor of Self-Worth brand was born, literally she started to take charge in her own life and in her own business to basically start to lead and inspire people around her. It was a magical effect. But there is one more thing that I have not shared with you. I think the last straw to my transformation was my 8-year-old son. Because I was working on myself. As I said, I kept spending money to fix myself somehow with coaches, therapists, emotional healers. Yet when my son was 8-year-old and he was playing soccer, and the whole season, one of the most skilled players, he has not scored the goal. And he kept telling me that, I have to cover everyone else. I don't trust my teammates. And I'm like, there's something wrong with this 8-year-old. I mean, what does that mean? He's not trusting his teammates. And I thought, well, obviously he's not trusting himself. So, and this is where I believe you sometimes must have an external point of view and mentor, a coach who could guide you a bit. And I said, well, I went to see my mentor and I said, Matt, I can't seem to coach through this boy. His challenge is around not trusting his teammates or himself. He had one question that has changed pretty much the trajectory of my whole life. He asked me, is his father scoring goals in life? And I didn't even want to be there to answer that question because my life sucked. Like, I hated my job. I didn't want to earn the money. I didn't want to keep paying rent. I just wanted freedom and really do what I love. And that's what happened through my breakout with the Doctor of Self-Worth brand. Like, I lived life on my terms for the last 5 years. Last year, we traveled for 8 months in Europe in a caravan. So everything has shifted. But the prime example, again, the mirror effect, was that my son has stepped into his power exactly the next year. when I had my own psychological breakthrough with a mentor.
That's powerful. A child will change your life. We know it. They will change everything about us. I wanted to ask really quick. We're getting close, but this was one of my questions. I wanted to ask, were you bullied in school? Because you mentioned a piece that you had a fear of speaking in front of people, and didn't want to be humiliated. And I think one time you were humiliated. Um, and if so, did that come from the triggers at home?
I have been very little bullying, not that much. I did probably invite, or let's say attract, some of the bullies, but the bigger experience that I have been going in loops was I I was seeing my opposites, like kids who have been amazing storytellers, and they were all my friends, And I was asking myself, like, why can't I have a word among them? And I have attracted them to be admired and to be wowed at how amazing, how let's say self-confident, how able these kids are. And obviously my pattern was comparing myself. And things went really, really difficult from that comparison, and I call that comparisonitis, because I think it's almost an illness to then keep doing that, whereas finding your authenticity, your authentic self, your own playground where there are no competitors. And I still believe, I mean, if your audience is aware, if you're running your own business or trying to run your own business, like, I want to challenge you. You want to read a book, it's called The Blue Ocean Strategy. Like, I don't want you to be in the red ocean. Amateurs compete, professionals create. So create your own genre, create your own product, do something that is only yours, and where they will appreciate you, where what you can turn into money, obviously something that you love to do, and there is your ticket to freedom. And that opportunity could have been there in your life for the last 10 years. But I think that's where you want someone to, let's say, remove the blinders, so you're not just watching the word, but you can actually see what's going on and where the teaching, where is the lessons that you might have missed.
So, in your work, it looks like one of your questions is, well, what happened if you unlocked your true potential? What happened for you, and what was your true potential? Give us a little bit about that once you did discover your own self-worth.
I believe what happens is each of us, and that applies to me too, have our, let's say, superpower. I'm talking about something that you can do better than anyone else. And when you find that playing field, there's one more thing to do. You want to ask yourself, who is ready to pay for this? Is it valuable? Can I commercialize this product or service? And then you can set your prices. And that's where I have ended up. When I when I realized, with my own breakthrough, with my, let's say, mindset coach in Australia, I realized, oh, so the last 34 years of struggle now all makes sense, because now I have a story. I'm a very credible person who has probably experienced every type of feeling low confidence or lack of self-worth, lack of self-love, lack of self-respect. And now I am able to connect with anyone who has those symptoms. So what happened ever since, when I have, let's say, transformed from shedding my old self, the unworthiness patterns, the I don't deserve patterns, then that I think this is the key. When that emotional freedom is created, then there is so much space. And if there is a good mentor around, and this is why I sort of offer free sessions to anyone, anywhere, because I want them to have that experience when there is someone with unconditional love. I don't care if they work with me or not, because that must be, for me, I set the terms to then let's make that a life transforming new awareness or experience, because from there is so much space, opportunities, hunches, your intuition kicks in. And I call this, is awareness of your true self, of your true freedom, because from there it's a lot easier to create. You can play and you'll be able to unlock results that you have never even imagined.
Love it. And we're getting close. I want to, you mentioned that your wife and children stopped believing in you. I was going to ask, you were faced with the choice of healing or divorce. How did that change your life? How did you start the journey to change once your wife and them said, I've had enough?
Wow, what a great question. Now, it wasn't that simple, but if I really go back into the details, like that week, I was driving trucks in Sydney, Australia, probably 5-6 days a week, and I fell asleep twice. Like, imagine waking up in the emergency lane while driving a truck, pretty bad. And once that week, I got home and I had a little bit of connection time with my kids, and it's usually reading out bedtime stories, and I kept falling asleep. So I allowed my kids, aged 8 and 5.5, to hit me and basically slap me in the face to wake up, to keep telling and reading a story. And usually at one point I didn't wake up anymore. I just crumpled on the floor, and in the morning I went to work from right there, because my wife was shaking me up that, hey, it's time for you to go to work. So I was a pretty bad place at that time. And what I said to my wife, and I don't even know how I had the balls, like, how was I able to come up with this? Because of so much struggle and failures, I said to her this: look, I don't know what's working for me. I don't know where or ever I'm going to have a breakthrough or not. But here's what I'm going to do. I won't give up, because I believe we deserve a better quality of life, more connection, more fun, joy, and just maybe something that I can earn money with or get recognized for, and maybe contribute to the world. And I said, if you choose to leave me and take the kids, I will accept it, and I will be the dad on the weekends. But I said, I cannot, in my good faith, say give up, and I'll be the dad who is living a small life, playing small for the rest of my life, because I think it's just unfair to me and unfair to you people as my family. And I expected her to basically walk out with the kids, but something has happened inside. And I think this is the key to my whole story, is that something snapped. I became probably 100% committed at that point. I said, shit, I really have to do something here, because I'm going to lose my wife and lose my kids. And then I became just a repetition of the previous wounded, dads and grandfathers and grandfathers, and we will go into repeat mode. And strangely, within 3 to 6 months, like, I've been working with coaches and therapists and all kinds of things before, but then attracted what works. So I think commitment is the key. Letting go of plan B. And how did I do that psychologically inside? Because that's important for you. If you're looking your own chances of a breakout, or find a way to believe in yourself, I said to myself, okay, I give up all of my goals. And what I'm left with is this. For the rest of my life, there's one single thing that I'm focusing on, is to work myself out of this psychological trauma or father and son relationship or whatever I'm carrying. And if it's not working, then I'm happy to drop that at the age of 85 or 95 or 100. And I'm happy to have it inscribed on my tomb. This was playing in my mind, that he has tried until the last moment and then he dropped dead. Like that was the plan A. And I was happy to go all along and lose my family. That's what it took. Strangely, 3 months, I attract the right person to mentor me. Within a year, I transform with help. After 33 years of doing the same thing without results. Impossible, huh?
Yeah. So we're almost at time. Really quick, we to final off, I want to ask really quick, what from based off of your life experience, what can you share with the audience to help them start the journey to healing, especially that has went through some childhood traumas with the disconnection of their dad and self-confidence issues?
Well, there's a few things I want to share. Is really look at the results that you might be having, and especially look at the repetitive struggles, the less than optimal results that keeps happening over and over and over again, because something in you is creating it, even if you don't know. So wake up and try and figure out what or how you have been creating those. But if you don't know, seek help. So you save 10, 20, or 30 years, because that's what keeps happening in sessions with people who come to me. They start to connect the dots. And you know what? It won't even cost you money, maybe. Just search, seek help. Because if you have new awareness, then all it takes is two things. Deciding to change it, and you might have a problem about believing that it's possible. And believing that it's possible for you to have new results or work or leave that childhood trauma behind. And if that's the case, I believe the shortcut is someone who has done it. Not who has just done it, but someone who has done it and is able to get others through it or out of it. Like that's the kind of person you want to be around, because they're going to help you, because they know what you're in, and don't complicate it. Sign up, follow the program or whatever they do, commit to it, and don't stop. I have created a small self-help guide on doctorofselfworth.com. There's a resources tab. It's called to seek. It's I call it the 6 steps to sort your shit out. And you can download it. It's free, and I'll take you through 6 steps. If you keep doing those 6 steps, and they are not even complicated, I won't allow you to sabotage your transformation.
Absolutely. And we always like to give our guests an opportunity to participate in shameless plug. So you do see your information scrolling across the bottom here. If you can let our viewers know how they can contact you, utilize your services, if there are any anything you're advocating for that you want to draw attention to, traffic to, anything you have for sale, anything you want to do to sell yourself, you have the floor.
I make it really easy. I don't want to sell anything. I only have people who are ready for help. And probably the best place to start is either my YouTube channel, where I have broken down to tiny little steps the transformation process. But my website is the best place to start, because then you can click and have a chat with me for half an hour. It won't cost you money. It's doctorofselfworth.com. That's DOCTOR of selfworth.com, all in one block. And you can browse around. There's free resources for you. And probably the easiest is just to have a chat. And then I do run a group program where I have a group of people, clients I meet with every 2 weeks. It's fairly cheap, sort of under the $500 mark. And you can stay with me for 6 to 9 months. And also we could look at then one-on-one help or I can make it hybrid. So see, I don't care actually how I help you, as long as you are the right person or a ripe person to be helped. And most importantly, I guarantee results. I don't know who is doing that in this field. I never had to give money back, but I'm ready. So what really happens when I get to chat to someone and we set some goals and outcomes, then you either get there, or I work more with you until you get there, or you get your money back. So I don't want you to waste your money and waste your time, because it really sucks. I had 29 or 30 years of that. So I want to save you time, save you money, and other than that, if you look for help in your town, I want you to check in. Is this person really, are they caring about me and caring about the results that we're getting? Is there any guarantee in place? And it's okay if you signed up to somewhere and it's not working. Move on. Get your money back. Move on. Look, I have been through many places where I was looking for self-help, and eventually I found help. Never give up.
Love it. We want to thank you for being a guest on Unfiltered, Unspoken podcast, sharing your testimony and being transparent. I know a lot of times we don't want to reflect, and as I always say, childhood traumas do affect adult decisions, and I'm a very big on that. So thank you for your transparency. Thank you for the flexibility all the way from Central Europe. We appreciate it, and we hope that your testimony will help someone else connect to start the journey to healing. And we're not going to stop sharing. We're going to keep sharing. Ain't that right, City said?
That's right.
I love you guys. I think your questions have been very, very insightful. Obviously, you have been through a lot of stories. And if you feel like you have a story for me, you would be welcome on the Heroes podcast, where I share personal transformations from struggle, pain, trauma to a life on your terms, where a personal brand is launched and you are out there to contribute and save the world. So yes, I'll drop you
would
the
love
link.
to share my testimony. I would love. This is how this started for me, sharing my life experience. So we'll chat off note about that.
Absolutely. I love you guys. And
Yeah, we love
I
you
want
too.
millions of people to listen to what you do. Well done.
Thank you. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe on YouTube to Unfiltered, Unspoken podcast. We have so many wonderful testimonies. And as we continue this journey, we ask for support from our communities around the globe, because we're international now. So everyone come and support. And we want to thank y'all for tuning in to Unfiltered Unspoken podcast.